The girl in the black uniform. Isla pulled at the collar of her catering uniform as the van turned into the long, tree-lined driveway of the Hale Grand Estate. The kind of driveway that made her stomach twist, not from nerves exactly, but from the quiet, familiar feeling of knowing she did not belong somewhere, yet needing to be there anyway. The estate spread wide against the pale evening sky, all white stone columns and climbing roses and windows that glowed like amber lanterns from the inside. Isla had seen pictures of places like this in magazines at the dentist's office. She had never imagined she would one day stand in the shadow of one. "Close your mouth," Nate Cole said from the seat beside her, nudging her elbow gently. He was her best friend from the catering company, a warm, lanky guy with a laugh that could fill any room. "You'll catch flies." Isla shut her mouth and rolled her eyes. "I wasn't staring." "You absolutely were," he grinned. "And honestly, same." The van parked behind the kitchen entrance, and the catering team poured out quickly, straightening uniforms, collecting trays, rehearsing their instructions. Their supervisor, a sharp woman named Darla, ran through the evening rules with military precision. No touching the decor. No photographing the guests. Smile at all times. Be invisible. Be invisible. Isla was good at that. She had spent most of her 22 years perfecting the skill. She had grown up in a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city with her mother, Gloria, a woman who worked double shifts at a laundry and still found time to read Isla stories before bed. Gloria had passed 2 years ago, quietly, the way she had always lived, without fuss or complaint. Since then, Isla had been the only version of herself left in the world. No family safety net. No backup plan. Just her, 3 jobs, a community college enrollment, and a small gray cat named Penny who headbutt her awake every morning. The ballroom inside the estate was something from another universe. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls from the ceiling. White roses filled every corner in enormous towers of bloom. Round tables draped in ivory silk held place cards for 500 guests, and the soft hum of a string quartet drifted through the warm air like something pulled from a dream. Isla moved through the crowd with practiced grace, lifting empty glasses, replacing them with full ones, keeping her expression pleasant and her presence small. She did not look directly at the guests, which was the rule, and also habit. It was Nate who nudged her arm, nearly causing her to tilt the tray. "Don't look now," he murmured, leaning close, "but the groom has been staring at you for the last 4 minutes." "Nate, stop. I'm serious. Don't look." "Okay, look." "No, don't." She looked. Across the length of the ballroom, standing near the white marble fireplace in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, was Roman Hale. Isla knew who he was, of course. Everyone knew who Roman Hale was. 30 years old, founder of Hale Technologies, worth more money than most small countries. His face had been on the covers of business magazines and tech journals and once, memorably, on a tabloid after he declined a Senate dinner invitation without explanation that he was not looking at the bride. He was not speaking to the guests surrounding him. He was looking directly at Isla with an expression she could not name. Not flirtatious. Not simply curious. Something deeper than both of those things. Something that looked almost like recognition. Isla looked away immediately and felt heat rise to her face. "See," Nate whispered. 4 minutes. I timed it." "He's probably just zoning out," Isla said, moving toward the far end of the room. "People do that at their own weddings. They go somewhere else in their heads." "That man is not zoned out," Nate said. "That man is very, very zoned in." Isla kept moving. She focused on the job. She smiled at the right moments, refilled glasses without spilling, navigated the crowd with quiet efficiency. But she could not stop her pulse from doing something strange every time she felt, without looking, that Roman Hale's eyes had found her again in the crowd. An hour into the reception, Isla slipped out through a side door to retrieve a fresh tray from the kitchen. The corridor was long and quiet, lined with framed photographs of the Hale family across generations. She paused at one without meaning to. A younger Roman in the photo, maybe 25, standing beside an older man in a garden. He looked lighter in that photograph. Less guarded. That was taken 3 weeks before the accident. The voice came from behind her. Low, unhurried, and certain. Isla turned around. Roman Hale stood in the corridor with his hands at his sides, watching her with that same unreadable expression from across the ballroom. Up close, he was taller than she had realized. His jaw was set firmly, but his eyes held something gentle in them, something that contradicted the controlled stillness of the rest of him. Isla straightened her posture. "I apologize, sir. I was just heading back to the kitchen." "Don't go," he said. Not as a command. More like a request that cost him something to make. She stopped. He took one step closer, just one, as if he was fully aware of the careful distance that should exist between them and was choosing, precisely, how far to press it. "I know I should not be standing here right now," he said. "I know what tonight is. But I have spent 5 years looking for you, and I cannot stand in that ballroom and pretend I did not just see you walk through the door." Isla felt the tray go cold in her hands. She stared at him. "I don't know what you mean." Roman's eyes held steady on hers. "5 years ago," he said quietly. "A rainy Thursday night on Route 7. A burning car. A girl who stayed with a stranger until the ambulance came, and then disappeared before anyone could even ask her name." The world became very still. Isla's breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. "That was you," Roman said. It was not a question, the wedding that was never his heart. The corridor felt entirely different after Roman spoke those words. The usual background noise of the estate, the clink of glasses, the murmur of 500 guests, the distant warmth of the string quartet, all of it seemed to recede, as if the building itself had held its breath. Isla set the tray down on a narrow console table beside her. Her hands needed somewhere to go. "That was a long time ago," she said carefully. Her voice came out steadier than she felt inside. "5 years," Roman said. "But I remember everything. The rain. The way you spoke to me to keep me from losing consciousness. You told me to hold on. You said it would be okay. You just kept saying it until the sirens came." He paused, his voice dropping lower. "And then you were gone." She had never told anyone about that night. Not Nate. Not even her mother, who had still been alive then. Isla had driven home afterward, stood under a hot shower for 20 minutes, and told herself it was nothing remarkable. A person in danger. A person who helped. That was how the world was supposed to work. "I didn't do it for recognition," she said. "I know that," Roman answered. "That is exactly why I needed to find you." For a moment they stood in the quiet corridor, and Isla looked at him properly for the first time that evening. Not as the billionaire groom. Not as the face on magazine covers. Just as a man standing in a hallway at his own wedding, carrying something heavy that he had clearly been holding for a very long time. "You should go back," she said. "Your guests are waiting. Your bride is waiting." Something shifted in Roman's expression at the word bride. A tightening around the eyes, brief and controlled, but she caught it. "This wedding was arranged 18 months ago," he began. "Between my father and her father. Between 2 companies that needed to merge. Between 2 families who decided that love was a luxury that successful people do not require." He looked toward the ballroom door, and in that glance was an entire story he had never said aloud. "I agreed because I thought I had nothing left to hope for. I had spent years looking for someone who probably did not want to be found, and I had convinced myself that letting go was the practical choice." Isla did not respond. She was not sure what she was supposed to say to that. "I am not telling you this to make you responsible for anything," Roman continued. I am telling you because you deserve to know the truth. And because I think I have been dishonest with myself for too long." Before either of them could say anything more, the door at the far end of the corridor opened and Nate appeared, looking flustered. "Isla, Darla is asking where you went. If you don't come back in 2 minutes she is going to have a genuine medical event." Isla looked at Roman. He said nothing. But his eyes said a great deal. She picked up the tray and followed Nate back through the door. The ceremony began at 9 in the evening in the estate's grand chapel adjoined to the main building. Isla stood near the back with the rest of the catering staff, not required to be present but not dismissed either. She told herself she would not watch. She watched anyway. Fiona Marsh walked down the aisle in a gown that had probably cost more than Isla's annual earnings. She was beautiful the way people were beautiful when everything in their life had always been arranged perfectly for them. Confident and polished and untouched by uncertainty. She did not look at Roman with love exactly. She looked at him the way a person looked at something they had correctly acquired. Roman stood at the altar. His posture was straight and formal and perfect. But Isla, standing at the far back of the chapel, could see his hands at his sides. They were not still. The officiant began to speak. The chapel was warm and full and hushed with reverence. Then, with the kind of timing that only happened in stories, Fiona's phone buzzed loudly into the silence. She glanced at it, and whatever she saw on that screen made her face go very white and then very red in quick succession. She looked up at Roman with an expression Isla could not fully read from where she stood. "I think," Fiona said clearly, into the silence of the chapel, "that we need to stop." The chapel murmured. Victor Hale, seated in the front row, went completely rigid. Fiona held up her phone. "My father just confirmed. The merger contracts were signed an hour ago. All parties have agreed." She looked at Roman and something close to relief moved across her face. "We don't need to do this anymore." The murmur became a wave of whispers rushing across the chapel like wind through tall grass. Roman looked at Fiona for a long, still moment. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "Completely," Fiona said. And she smiled then, small and genuine, possibly the first genuinely honest expression Isla had seen from her all evening. Roman turned to face the full chapel of guests. His father was already rising from his seat, face tight with controlled fury. Roman looked at him calmly. Then he looked toward the back of the room. He found Isla immediately, as if he had known exactly where she was standing all along. He said nothing. He did not need to. Isla felt her heart do something complicated and irreversible inside her chest. Nate leaned close to her ear. "Did that just happen?" he breathed, "or am I having a very specific dream?" "Be quiet, Nate," Isla said softly. She did not look away from Roman Hale. The world he built, and the girl who fit in it. The estate grounds were still and silver in the hour after midnight. Most of the guests had left in a quiet rush of hushed conversations and hurried goodbyes. The catering team had been dismissed early, paid in full, and sent back to the vans. The rest of the evening, Darla had told them firmly, would not be required. Isla sat on a low stone bench near the garden fountain, her tray left inside, her uniform jacket folded across her knees. She had not meant to stay. She had walked out with Nate and then, somewhere between the kitchen exit and the van, she had simply stopped moving. Nate had looked at her for a long moment. "I am going to pretend I don't know where you are," he said carefully. "For about 45 minutes. And then I am texting you." She had nodded and he had gone. The fountain ran quietly. The roses were silver gray in the moonlight. Somewhere in the distance, an owl made itself known among the tall old trees. Roman found her there 20 minutes later. He had taken off his jacket and rolled his sleeves to the elbow. He looked, for the first time all evening, like a person rather than a figure. He sat down on the bench beside her, leaving space between them, and he did not rush into words. Your father looked like he wanted to rearrange the entire building, Isla said finally. Roman made a short sound that was close to a laugh. He is not happy. He will be less happy tomorrow. And then, in about 3 months, when his company continues to perform exactly as it would have regardless of who I married, he will accept it and move on. That is how he works. And Fiona? Fiona is going to be absolutely fine, Roman said. Better than fine. She has been in love with someone her father would never have approved of. A quiet, kind man who works in architecture and has no interest in mergers or boardrooms. Tonight may honestly be the best thing that ever happened to her. Isla turned that over in her mind. You knew about him? For about 6 months. We talked honestly, eventually. We were both trapped inside the same agreement, both hoping the other one would find a way out first. He looked at his hands briefly. I was not brave enough to do it myself. Fiona, it turns out, is significantly braver than I am. Isla looked at him. So what happens now? Roman turned to face her fully. In the moonlight, his expression was open in a way it had not been inside the bright, formal spaces of the estate. I know that what I said to you tonight was a great deal to place on a person. I know you came here to do a job, not to be found by someone from a night you had probably put away. I did not put it away, Isla said quietly. I just did not think it mattered to anyone except me. It mattered, Roman said. It changed everything. Not only because you saved my life, though you did. But because of the way you did it. You stayed. You talked to me. You were completely calm when I was terrified, and you just kept telling me it would be okay, and I believed every word. He paused. I have been looking for that certainty ever since. I thought I was searching for a person to thank. But I think I was searching for something much larger than that. Isla felt something warm and quiet move through her chest. I am a waitress, she said. Not as an apology. Just as truth. I share a studio apartment with a cat. I am halfway through a business degree that I pay for $20 at a time. I don't belong in a world like this. You belong exactly where you are, Roman said. And where you are right now is here. That is enough to begin with. She looked at him for a long moment. He held her gaze without flinching, without performing, without the careful composure she had watched him maintain all evening in front of 500 guests. Just a man on a garden bench in the middle of the night, asking for nothing except the chance to start. I have a cat, she said. Her name is Penny. She does not like strangers. I am very patient, Roman said. I work 3 jobs and I study on weekends. I can wait. I am not going to become a different person because of what you have. I don't want a different person, he said, and the simplicity of the way he said it made it the most powerful thing she had heard all night. Isla exhaled slowly. The fountain ran on. The owl was quiet now. The garden smelled of roses and cool stone and something clean and new, like the particular scent of a morning that had not yet started. Nate is going to text me in about 15 minutes, she said. Then we should probably exchange numbers before that, Roman said. She laughed. It surprised her, the way it came out easily and without planning. Roman smiled at the sound of it, the first full smile she had seen from him all evening, and it changed his entire face. Softened it. Opened it. Made him look like someone she could trust with the ordinary, fragile parts of her life. She gave him her number. He saved it carefully, the way people save things they did not intend to lose. 3 months later, Isla moved out of the studio apartment. Not into the estate. That was not who she was, and Roman understood that completely. She moved into a small, bright flat on the 4th floor of a building downtown, the kind of place she had always imagined when she was counting spare coins to pay for textbooks. Roman helped her carry every single box up the stairs without complaint. Penny sat in her carrier and watched him with profound suspicion. 6 months after that, Isla finished her degree. Roman sat in the third row of the ceremony hall among strangers, in a plain seat, with no announcement and no fuss. She did not know exactly where he was sitting until she found him afterward in the crowd. He was holding a single white rose, not a dramatic bouquet, just one flower, because he knew her well enough by then to know she would prefer it that way. Their love was not the kind that lived in grand gestures or expensive things. It was the kind built quietly, in honest conversations and patient mornings and in the small daily choices to show up for each other without condition. It was the kind that people wrote about because it was rare, and it was rare because it was real. And it began, like all the best stories, in the most unexpected place. A corridor. A photograph. A question asked without certainty about the answer. A girl who had once told a frightened stranger that everything would be okay. And a man who never, for a single day, stopped believing her.